Good evening. Happy Sunday to everyone. Welcome back to the UpSet podcast. We're looking forward to another great conversation. And that's not possible without the best crew in all the land. So let's bring them on. Hey, guys.
Well,
Go
Hey,
ahead, Tally.
family.
Go ahead, Tally. Get her.
well,
Get her, Tally.
the best crew in all the land couldn't make it, but we're here for you.
Hey, family.
Good to see you. Glad you're feeling better, Marlena.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Good to see everybody. We know this has been a busy week for a lot of us, but especially for our colleague there, Pat. Camp's in session.
Yeah.
How are things going?
He still got his hair. Oh, I'm sorry. He lost that a while ago. I'm
Looking
sorry.
all around it. Well, I will tell you this. I drove up to camp. I took a rabbi with me, and really I did. I took a rabbi with me, and we went in, and the kids look healthy, and camp was in full swing. And isn't this the first one in a couple of years, Pat?
Yeah, just the first one. First one.
There was a really good spirit about it. I tell you, the rabbi who was with me said, this reminds me when I was at camp when I was a kid. I was going to say, oh, that many black people at your camp too. but it looked really good, Pat. I tell you, just from looking at it.
Yeah,
How many kids?
They 141 right now. 141.
Great.
But we have this thing now. We saw Tally's Lexus turn the corner. So we always like, okay, guys, this is the acting. This is the acting part. But it's amazing. It has been an amazing week. I cannot believe how 1 week has passed since then, and it's good. We got one more to go.
Yeah,
Excellent.
You have some happy parents out there finally getting their kids
break.
away from the devices. That's what I heard a lot of parents saying when I dropped my girls off. I was listening to parent conversation. They're like, I'm so glad my child's not going to be attached to that device all summer. This is a great opportunity. So
how many weeks is the camp, and are they not allowed to have their devices?
Mm-hmm.
It's 2 weeks, and about a couple of years. Well, a couple of years ago, we decided no more cell phones for them.
Oh man, that's excellent. Man.
They're dying. They are dying.
Well, honestly, truly, 2 days. Give them at least 2 days. They don't miss it anymore. But the first day, they were, we have to have a show on that. Yep, they were going through withdrawals. The second day, is that the guy? Oh, we hate PG. Yeah.
Right.
By the third day, they learn Morse code. Morse code.
Okay.
They're always going to find a way to communicate.
Smoke signals, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
smoke signals. But they're good.
Cool.
I want to thank you, but I'm retired now, but I still have my church, and 5 of my kids were there, and they greeted me in the warmest way. I tell you, and it was just beautiful to see them. Zuri and Joel and Alethea and Addison. I mean, just beautiful. I mean, it really made me miss being the pastor of my children.
Yeah.
I will never get over that, being the pastor. I had the best kids. They were extraordinary. They are extraordinary children, and so
That's
I'm
wonderful.
sure
And our conference constituents, some do, of course, the parents that bring their children up here. But I'll tell you, our conference has no clue as to the amount of hard work that Patrick and Orion have to do.
Yeah.
It's massive. And you really have to be wanting to do this, to put up with all of those mindsets.
Did he say crazy? What did he say?
Yeah, I was just trying to be nice about it. But yeah, I've watched them over the years, but then, this one with being the first time back in a couple of years, I just, wow, if people had a clue, if you spend a day in the life of the counselors and a day in the life of the director, and after about maybe 2 hours, you're ready to go home. It's like, okay,
out, man.
Thank you. It was very nice. You guys have fun.
But they have a heart for it. Youth leaders are born and raised. I mean, you can't do that without the heart of the ministry, and they have the heart for young people. That's the only way you can do it. Yeah.
And I know, Pat, you guys are, we have a lot of I'm gonna call them students, but campers who are not necessarily from our churches, community campers who are there. And I know you were raising money. Do you want to go ahead, since we're on, just shout out that website if people want to donate to help some
Yeah, there's just one person out there that could pay for the whole thing. Marlena, if you just go ahead and write that check.
You got it, buddy. You got it. It's coming. I got about $5.
One thing I the community has to be a part of this in some way or another. We did talk to administration about extending the last week in years to come for just the community for day camps alone. But the night camps or the overnight, we do have a few, not a few. I'm going to tell you now, we have 30 that we have gone to different low income situations, not just housing and all that, but situations, been falling on bad times, parents who have lost their jobs because of COVID, all of that. So we brought them in the graciousness of the Treasury Department upstairs. And so far it's looking good. We're right at $5,000. We're raising $15,000.
What's the website?
The website is www.helpmycampers.com, and it's coming in.
Yeah.
www.helpmycampers.com.
And it should be on the screen there.
Yeah, it's on the screen there.
So this is a great opportunity. This is evangelism at its best. I always say
this is great.
You can change a child's life.
Great.
Learning about God.
I want to help.
Thank you, Nick. Talifer, I saw you on TV preaching about a week ago. I'm just going to ask you to donate what they gave you for speaking at that place.
Hey, that's going to move some things. That's going to move some things.
Would you speak at the White House?
More like the outhouse, but.
No, that's great. A great cause. I'll put it one more time because I just think it's such a worthy.
Yeah, I bet I'm sending something too.
I'm going to send something as soon as this program is over. I'm going to make sure I send something.
Nick, just do it during the program. I just want to see. I want to see your face.
Let it be real.
Somebody told Pat that this is a PBS telethon. You hear that bell ringing in the background. Thank you for that contribution.
No. Okay. No, I mean,
you're doing a good work, my friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. We're excited about that.
Amen.
Thank you to the best crew in all the land.
Yeah. Don't forget it. All right. So we talk camp. I mean, there's other things going on in the world, but right now it's all about Camp Danny Davis in our world.
Yeah, that's all. Nothing better than the children.
That's right.
One of the stories this past week that just I'm still trying to wrap my brains around. I mean, we've heard it before. This young man who was shot. I think the latest story said they found 46 or 47 wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
From the police department. And I just need to know. Yeah, Jalen. Oh, what is his name? That's a shame. I should know that. I was just so taken back every time I hear the story, and of course there's always other sides of the story. The police have their side, whatever. We understand that police have, dangerous jobs. All understand that. We appreciate the good police officers for doing a job. But I'm still trying to understand why over 40 bullet wounds.
Yeah.
What possible danger could there have been for them to fire on this young man those many times?
I see it as a loss of control. Well, I don't want to say you couldn't be in your right mind doing something like that, but
they're actually, I interviewed a former police chief and trainer who trains officers and has been doing it for 40 years. And he said that there's a phenomenon that's known in policing that occurs when, shooting starts. The adrenaline is at a high level. And if your partner shoots, you will shoot and not be able to recognize. Now, this is not excusing anything, but it's explaining. But you will not realize they're officers who in training will empty their magazine and they'll say, officer, how many times did you fire? 5 times, sir. And then they look at their magazine and they've shot 12 times, because you get caught up in the moment. And if you tell yourself, you convince yourself you're in danger, then it doesn't matter how much retro evaluation is done. At that moment, you were in mortal danger.
The adrenaline.
And so, yeah, the adrenaline. I mean, there are all sorts of human things to explain it, not to excuse it, but to explain it.
It's sad, though. Very sad.
Yeah, it is really sad. I'd hate to be the parents of that situation. And another story that comes up is, what do you do? I mean, those are police, but on the other hand, in Philadelphia, a 73-year-old man lost his life at the hands of a group of teenagers. And I'm talking about 13 and 14-year-old teenagers who they didn't mean to kill him, but their wanton disregard for his life led to him dying as they beat him with one of those traffic cones. And they're 14. I mean, and you look at them, they're kids, but they committed an adult crime. What do you do with them? What do you do with a teenager who does something so heinous and despicable? People, you need to hang them. We need to, put them in jail for the rest of their lives. You can't become the very thing that you hate, which is lacking compassion and merciless. So, but what do you do? So that's something being discussed now.
Yeah.
Wow. That just makes me think, those young kids, what they've been exposed to all their lives. So, what are we doing as a church? We could have some of those kids, involved with camp and things like that, versus them being on the street year after year, learning, the rough times of life, So when we're sitting around as a church doing nothing,
sitting around,
or
right.
sitting around minimal, there's work to do.
There are no kids like that at Camp Danny Davis, though.
No. But Nick, I'm going to ask you, in the city of Philadelphia, I know when I was coming up, we had the police athletic league.
Yeah.
PAL, is that still going on?
Very much so. I mean, PAL is still it's probably more active now than it was back when we were kids. I mean, the truth of the matter is, people say we don't give these kids anything to do, and no wonder. The kids have a lot more to do now. When you and I were kids growing up, you had a rock, I had a rock, and we come together and beat them together, and that was called fun. I mean,
we're more creative with
we had to be creative, but now these kids got a lot. It's not. We can't keep beating ourselves up and saying, well, it's our fault because we didn't give the children anything to do. But we went through on air this past week the top 8 songs that were being played that children listen to. All of them are either sexual or violently oriented,
right.
And most of them mix the two.
Yeah,
which is and we do that all the time. Think about it. When you thought about James Bond, he'd be in a tuxedo, looking suave and sexy, with a gun.
Oh,
Shaft,
Yeah, look at all the thumbnails on Netflix and Prime Video. Most of them have a gun in it.
There's we conflate sexuality and violence together. It's all about trying to figure out how to look powerful and potent, and we've got to teach our children other ways to be expressive other than those.
And I will say that this is all the more reason for our churches, especially churches that are in inner city, to have a community center in the church. Now, and I know that's easier said than done. I'm not a pastor. I've never run a church. But if you're in a community, especially a community that's challenged, what better time, what better ministry is there to open your doors to the community and provide some kind of leadership or guidance or professionally, of course, for the community young people. I do know that the church here, I believe the church in Pottstown, Walnut Street Church, a few years back, they needed some assistance from media department, so we went out for their vacation Bible school. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if any of the listeners are from the Walnut Street Church, I believe nearly 75% of the people that were there, or the kids that were there, were from the community. And the parents look forward to bringing them to vacation Bible school. And I would dare say that, there might even have been some baptisms as a result of that. But
Amen.
just think if we had something like that going on a regular basis, and the children in the community had a place to meet, didn't have to be every day because, that can be costly, but at least a place where they can meet, where we can have a chance to relate to them.
Yeah, and I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry, Marlene. No, go ahead.
Tally. Okay, I'll say this very quickly. When I was in Virginia, we were servicing two communities that we had adopted, and when we would do surveys, just asking, the parents, what do you need here? Many of them would say, we want alternatives for our children because we don't want them on the streets. I mean, we were in hard knocks, public housing communities, and so they want their children in activities, that keeps them off the street.
Mhm.
The issue is, and Chuck is right, you would have to, Chuck is right, you would have to actually pay because we don't have the church support enough to, help with the kids. And one thing, when children come in to church, and they're not used to church, they're not used to church. So they tear the place up, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So you have to make sure they have, you have lots of help, male help to help, because they're not used to, sitting
Mhm.
down for so long or something like that, and so they need it. Oh my goodness, they need it so much. So when I hear these 13 and 14-year-olds killing, I mean, they didn't just start, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
They've been
Yeah.
walking that way for a
For
while.
a
But
minute.
if
Yeah.
if we as the church could, you know, help do something,
Let
you know.
let me just ask you this question because I know we need to move on, but you've been in, city administrations and things like that. Are there still grants, or was there ever a grant program for local churches to provide community assistance on that level? Does that sort of thing still go on in the
It
city, let's say
is.
the city of Philadelphia?
There are plenty of them. I mean, the
Mm,
problem is, and this is especially with our churches, you have to staff. You have to invest in vision. You
yeah.
can't lift vision with volunteers.
Yeah, that's
You have
There
to
true.
you go.
staff
Yeah.
vision, and
You said it.
Adventist churches tend to not. Adventist churches tend to be cheap,
Mm,
and they don't want to pay anybody to do things. We finally got to the place where we realized that people who train and who are talented musically should
mhm,
be compensated for the skill that they bring to bear upon their services. But you've got to staff this kind of thing. You have to have somebody to answer your phone, and
Right.
somebody who's going to watch the building, because if you're waiting for Deaconess Tippy Toe to come in and clean up after the kids, your church is gonna look like who done it and what for, because it's
right,
tippy toe busy.
Me
right.
too.
And so,
Mhm.
it's
That is true. But the issue is the money's obtained in the churches. You don't even have enough, especially if it's a
Mhm,
small church and you're trying to do ministry. You
what
don't
what has
collect
to
enough.
happen is it's, and this is when I became the director of faith-based initiatives for Philly. What we discovered is that churches, instead of working together, they started separating so that they can each get the grant, and they started competing with each other
mm,
instead of
Ah,
cooperating with each
I
other.
see.
Mm,
Because
mhm.
what we need is for the 8 churches in the area to say, okay, you do Monday, I do Tuesday,
There you go.
that
and
Collaboration.
would be
collaborate.
great.
Huh.
Yeah.
But people don't do that, and the grant makers don't make it easy to do it, and Adventists don't tend to partner with anybody.
Mm,
Mm,
Now
That
we'll
is
we'll
right.
do something, and now we'll give out some sandwiches or something, but we are not going to partner as equal partners with First Baptist or Second Methodist, because that's just not
mm.
how we work, and
Well,
we have to
that's a
learn to
mm.
be better
two-parter
at it.
show right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the podcast show one. Now we're gonna transition into no, because this is great dialogue. This is probably
This is
something we'll
really
have to
good,
come
Tally.
back
We
with.
we need to do something like that in this
Mhm.
area,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we want you to spearhead it.
We
We'll be
we
a
were
part.
working on it at Philly one time. It was called Adventist Resource Management. Because every one of our churches had 8 ratty blankets and 5 cans of beans to give out in case somebody had a fire. And we said, well, why don't we have a building where all of our stuff is kept together?
There you
And
go.
instead of every church having, a can of beans and something, that we have a resource pool that we manage together as Adventists. And
Well, when we do a show on this topic. I really got a story for you from North Philly back in the day with community services. So I'll save it for later.
You got it, man.
But no, this is great, guys. We got to keep that conversation going. Young people are very important. Working with our communities to help them is important. So this sounds like another topic that we have just stumbled upon just from our conversation.
Sometimes our children are out there.
Yes,
very much so.
That's our reality. All right. So last week we were talking, we had a show planned and we thought we were just going to hit it and keep on moving. But the dialogue got so good and you all said, we got to do a part 2. We read your comments and we said, we got to come back. So we're here to kind of pick up where we left off. As you may recall, last week we were talking about the D word, divorce. And there's so many layers to it. We're just going to pick right back up and continue this dialogue. Tally, where do you want to start?
Drum roll.
Yeah, well, I won't start with the lights, cameras, and action this time. I'll start with scripture because we're taking up where we left off last week. The issue of divorce is one that is serious. Somebody once said that in the church, not just in the world. Last week I shared with you that the Christian community is more likely to have divorces than the non-Christian community. And so a lot of it's based on ideals, the fact that we have a higher sense of profession, which means you expect more. And when you expect more, you're more likely to be disappointed. But anyway, they say that if marriage was a cruise ship, that for every 10 couples that got on to take the cruise, 5 couples would jump off midway. 2 couples will be standing there looking over the reel, wondering how far it is down to the water and will it hurt?
Should we try?
Another couple would be asking themselves why they got on in the first place. And maybe 2 couples would say this is a great cruise because marriage is difficult. They came to Jesus and they asked him about divorce. And this is found in Matthew 19. And they said, is it okay to divorce anyone for any cause? Now, I got 2 great questions to ask you. What are the grounds for divorce?
Tally, I do have an answer for that, but I'm going to wait.
Okay.
Right.
I'm going to throw it out there because I know he's going to chew me up anyway, but
don't be scared.
I'm not scared of him. Y'all know I'm not scared of him. Abandonment. And
adultery.
Well, the scripture said, in the scripture even say, well, we'll go with adultery. It says fornication, but it's concerning.
I mean, the word, I believe the word is porneo. I think it's porneo. I think it means uncleanness or, I think it is, but adultery or fornication or or fivocation if it's really nasty. But, so you have sexual impurity or fornication or adultery and abandonment. Are there any other grounds?
Death.
Well, that's not a divorce, Charles.
It feels like a death when you get it. So
guess I meant that. I meant this.
He been sitting in that chair for 3 weeks, ain't moved. I put a mirror under his nose, and there was no fog on
divorcing
it. Can't I marry somebody else
now? No, I guess I should unpack that.
Oh my goodness!
That was funny,
I mean,
Chuck. That was funny. Death. I guess I was thinking I should have couched it differently, but death of a relationship. In other words, unreconcilable.
Unreconcilable differences. Ooh, that's a big category.
That's a.
She burned the beans. I can't live with that.
Is that scriptural though? Or that's our
first book
decision.
of Charles, chapter 3.
That's our decision. I think we just can't get along.
Jesus, everybody says that, and here's what the text says, and this is when people have to be careful not to become a slave to ink on a page. It says, they said, is there any reason to divorce? And Jesus tells them that the idea behind marriage is to become one flesh, and in that one flesh to represent that which God has brought together, and that should not be separated. And they say, well, how come Moses said we can do it? And he said, because of the hardness of heart. Because of the heart. Now, what does that mean? Now, when we talk about grounds, that statement comprises grounds for divorce. And then he says, I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And everybody says, there's the grounds. But the truth of the matter is, Jesus here was only talking about what a man could do to a woman. Didn't even include what a woman could do to a man. It wasn't a comprehensive statement. But he was trying to get them to move past what they saw and the cruelty that they would often exact on their wives with the separation and divorce papers that they would give a woman and tell her, get to stepping. That's all you had to do, right? Or I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee. Don't let the door hit you with a good Lord, and you put her out. But the fact of the matter is that Moses says, because of the hardness of your heart, the challenges in your own issues.
Right. Nick, I'm sorry, Nick, I was
go ahead, please.
I was having a conversation. It's a bunch of us as couples earlier on. And one of the things that we've said was, I made a statement and said, if my wife committed adultery, that's not good enough for me to leave.
That's not grounds. Yeah.
It's not good enough. Or likewise, I said that and everybody was like, oh, but the Bible, but the Bible, but the Bible, especially what I know now than what I knew back then. I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are. And if she doesn't love me anymore, or I don't love her anymore, or there's no growth or no movement, I'm out.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what I was trying to tell you. The death of a relationship. I should have.
No, Chuck. I knew where you were going.
And you would be out, Pat. Out.
That's true. That's true.
The former youth leader.
And you know what? And here's the thing, Nick. The reason why I was so careful was because former youth leader, pastoring, Caribbean, strict background, that's unfair to me, and that's unfair to her. That we're gonna stay in this impasse because of what other people might think of what's going on while we're dying on the inside. And so when I look at Jesus making this statement to them, that thing that says the hardness of your heart only hardens because, as Chuck says, it hardens because it's dying. It's atrophy. It's becoming atrophy because it's dying. So I think things can be worked out if both want it to be worked out. But if one doesn't want to go the distance with it, that's where the death by 100, how we say it, by 1,000 cuts.
By 1,000 cuts.
By 1,000 cuts come in.
Let me ask you this, Patrick.
Hold on. I know I'm not going to be elected again, but go ahead. Come on with this.
Well, what does the Caribbean have to do with it?
That's culture. Good. Right. I'm glad you said that, because it may not be there now, or it may be weakening now, but you marry someone.
You were there.
You're there for life. I mean, that's.
And if you think Caribbean culture would be that, Nigerian culture was even more fixed on the fact that if we're married, we stay married. Now, even with death, you go ahead and put some rouge on that cadaver, and you go on out to dinner together.
Remind me, Tally, do Nigerians believe in monogamy, one wife, or are they having many?
There's some communities, that have more than one wife.
But no community in North Philadelphia.
But I don't want to fix it. That's one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to make a statement and fix it. I want to say that God could fix anything if two are relying on God to fix anything.
Well, let me ask this, because this is something one of our viewers asked in the chat last week. With all that we've just heard, would God or the Holy Spirit then guide someone to divorce?
Yes.
It's a possibility.
But it would be absolutely rare and absolutely last resort. And it should.
If there's abuse, Tally, God would guide that.
I believe if it is to save one's life and
in danger
and sanity, I mean.
Okay, no, Nick, I'm not going to let you get away with that.
Okay.
the last word you used there, you just skipped over it, and I can't let you lose.
What, sanity?
Yes, because people are going to hear the first thing that you said and miss over the second that you've heard. Mental health abuse is just as bad.
That's right.
As physical abuse. So don't skip
That's
over
right.
sanity. God will allow the Holy Spirit to work on you to leave if sanity is going to make you lose your soul salvation.
Listen, I agree, and I look. I wouldn't want to skip over it. When Jesus addressed this, what he was trying to say is, and this is the whole scriptural panoply, that God has an ideal. This is what he wants, that marriage is two people committing themselves, becoming one flesh, and reflecting the image of God by that being one flesh. And that's how Jesus starts it. Have you not read, he who created them from the beginning made them male and female? It is that reflection. And it says, and God puts that together. Man should not figure out ways to separate it. And then they say, well, how come Moses let us do it? And then Jesus gives the less than ideal situation because of the hardness of your heart. When hearts are hardened, when people are not able to find each other in love and to bridge the chasm that exists because their hearts are hardened, then what happens is this is something that God tolerates. It's not something he wants. Right. It's not something that God would choose as first resort, but it is something that God would tolerate. And, later on, he'll fix it out in the wash because he says in the resurrection, you're not going to be married anyhow. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that one because they think that they wife so fine that they got to go through eternity with the sister. And you can go ahead and have that. But, the fact of the matter is that Jesus says, in the resurrection, he says in the resurrection, it's not that way. It says, for when this is Mark 12:25, for when they shall rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels which are in heaven. And people just, they figure, no, that can't be right because what me and girlfriend got going on just got to keep going through eternity. But anyway.
Well, on the other hand,
some
people say, good.
But here's the thing too. Can I get to I heard that. Natasha said heaven is cheap enough. I heard that. Y'all go back a couple of seconds and turn that up when she said it. Listen, let me just tell you this. And that's why we become stuck. I remember in our last show, we were talking about the percentages of those who remarry, right? And it looks so dismal. It's like, okay, let me just
remarry and then get divorced. You mean?
Yes, second marriage is 63%,
right?
Yeah.
Third marriage is 70-some%.
Yeah. And for some reason, that I'm kind of looking at freeing people to go ahead and
what are you saying?
Freeing people, Marlena,
to go ahead and
get married again.
Well,
did something come across? Maybe it was my radio.
Need to finish the sentence.
Okay. No. And honestly and truly, no jokes about this. As a pastor, people will come. I've got a divorce. I'm happy. I went to another church. You know what I mean? I'm giving you a real good scenario. I went to another church while I was there for 3 years or so, and don't worry about the time frame. That's not what I mean. I met this brother that our stars aligned. I know it. I can feel it. I can, it's very difficult for me as a pastor to say, okay, let's check the record now. Who divorced who? What happened?
A judgmental community works from the perspective of who can I assign blame to?
Right.
A redemptive community works from the perspective of how can I bring healing to bear upon this? And what Jesus says, he says, listen, you were made to be together in marriage, and the only reason that marriage should ever end is because the hardness of hearts disallows healing. And then he says, if you're trying to find an excuse, and you do it because you think you got an excuse, you're creating an adulterous situation for yourself. And I mean, this is what Jesus is saying, but the fact of the matter is that people make mistakes, people err, and we have to find redemptive ways for their erring not to become an eternal scar that disallows them from reaching the fullest level that humanity will allow. And that means it's a case-by-case basis from a community perspective.
And Tally, if you could help the people understand, is as if Jesus was speaking to the culture, because the culture was that the men would choose the wives.
Yeah.
They would also divorce the wives. So when they divorce the wife, then the wife cannot remarry unless he's dead, because if she does, she commits adultery.
Yeah.
You know, so how fair is that? When, I mean, she's just the property that's being passed, and then God, you know, would say, no, you can't marry, because if you do, you would be committing adultery. And so people live like this, thinking, if I marry, you know, then I'm going to be out of the will of God. And it was as if Jesus was speaking to that culture, because it's pretty disappointing if you have no control of the situation and the person divorces you, right? And so now you are not allowed to remarry. So you're just by yourself because of the decisions that somebody else made.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and law has reigned supreme, you know, and the idea, well, I can't remarry because I can't prove he committed adultery. I've seen people try to set each other up for adultery. Worse still, I've seen people say, all right, look, I committed adultery. I'll, you know, put me out to church. Next Wednesday, baptize me. And the next Thursday, I'm going to marry a girlfriend, because they're meeting the demands of the law, but they're not meeting the demands of the spirit, how that community has been torn, how that relationship has been torn. I mean, you know.
So what is the right, what is the right way? I mean, because we talked last week about, you know, scenarios of how the community, I know we had a little debate about whether the community is really involved or should be involved.
Marlena agreed with me on this.
Let's not talk about that again.
And that's the thing about these situations. There's no one size fits all. No two divorces will look the same, or, you know, but in terms of what we consider proper constructive steps, acting in the spirit, as you said it, Tally, what does that look like? Someone is divorced. They've gone through this cycle of restoring peace, which we talked about last week. And now they're at that place where they are ready to pursue another relationship.
Well, I mean, in the criminal justice world, they call it restorative justice. And that is, you don't look to see who can I punish and who do I blame. You look, you know, how can the aim is to create wholeness. What is the best way to create wholeness here? Sometimes a person needs to leave a church because, you know, you've got I had this happen to me at a church where I pastored. A guy left his wife, and his wife and her 3 kids were at the church. I didn't know this. He comes back with his new girlfriend. I don't know who he is. He's just coming every week, and he wants me to perform his wedding. And finally somebody says, you do know that that's so-and-so's ex-husband. I did not know that. And I told him, listen, I believe you love the Lord, and I believe you want that God will save you, but he can't do it here. I mean, you have to go to another church, because I can't, you know, your wholeness and your attempt to be whole here is injuring the fabric of the community that you tore when you left this. And so I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm simply saying that you can't do that here. And, you know, said, but I like it here. I want to be here. I like your preaching.
My church too, you know.
I said, I'll send you a tape and you can hear my preaching, you know. But, you know, I want you to be happy, but, you know, you can't do it here.
And may I also add, as a divorced female, I believe in God's grace, because there are times when divorce happens to us, you know, and I just believe that God has grace towards, you know, us who may, and I haven't remarried or anything like that. But there's so many other people.
Anything like that?
What was it? Yeah.
What else like that?
Right there, Marlene.
What else like that, Marlene?
There was something in my throat.
We noticed that.
The spirit stopped you in the middle of your statement.
I know y'all put up my campers. What's Marlena's number?
But listen, I still I just know that God has grace. He knows situation. He knows what happens in the home. He knows the whole situation where other people do not. And so if there's a decision to be alone for the rest of your life because you were a victim of this, whatever the situation was. And notice, Pat, when I said abuse, I didn't say what type, because abuse is abuse no matter what kind it is. And it destroys more than the spouse. It destroys the children too. And so sometimes you got to get out of that thing, for your sanity, for your safety, whatever the case. But I just want to say to other people, God's grace is there, and so if you have decided to, it's between you and God. I'm going to say that's between you and God. It is.
Listen,
it is.
Listen, you know what? I'm going to jump in this part only because, let me tell you why I'm jumping in this side of it, Marlena. Not against you, but
because I'm gonna show you the scripture. Go ahead.
We take that.
You're gonna find some ink on a page.
I'm a pastor. I am.
We take that statement and we run with that. Oh, I'm not saying you're not right. I'm saying we take that statement and
Tally is. You see his head shaking like he having
don't worry
exorcism.
About Tally. Yeah. Don't worry about Tally. You have a responsibility when you divorce, and you have a responsibility. I'm
talking about remarriage.
No. I know. I'm going to say
same thing.
That's the part I mean too.
Even in that,
there's a responsibility in remarriage, and the thing is that this is where our fight last week, and you know what I mean by that, green room and all our fights on community comes in. You still have to care about the community that we live in. So even if you say, "Oh, this situation is between me and God," and I'm thinking more young people when I think about that statement. It's between you and God and the community, because there's still something that you need to deal with. That I get divorced, and all of a sudden I want to show up to my wife's family reunion, my ex-wife's family reunion
with your new girlfriend.
Well, I'm not. You guys taking it to a whole nother level.
No. I get it. No, Marlene, and I get it, Marlene.
You find that text there, Marlene?
Leave her alone.
You know where it is, where the law abounds grace. Where the law abounds, grace does much more abound. Grace.
I agree with that.
Does much more abound.
But even if you say it loud, it doesn't mean it applies.
Grace. Make me preach.
No, Marlena, I want to be clear that that's not the part I was talking about. Because you are 100% correct. I believe that. I believe God can start over. I believe that. Yeah. I need people to understand that's listening to this right now, that there is a responsibility
to the community
in divorce. There is a responsibility in remarriage. That even though it is between you and God, you got to make sure that you're not continuing to injure or continuing to hurt the community as you move forward from there. I think there's responsibility.
Let me see if I can get loud and sound like a preacher. Now are ye the body of Christ? I mean, you've got to make sure, like, if you don't like your left hand, you can't just go out and get another left hand and tell the body, now you're going to have two left hands. That you've got to make sure that what you're doing is not injurious to the body. And sometimes that requires you. I mean, take a look at Cain. The Lord sent him on a pathway away from the community.
And still blessed him.
Right, but away from the community.
He said,
and so there are times when people have to, you may have to. There are a lot, and this is my next question, about marriage.
But stay right there where you were, because my point was not that they have God's grace to marry and stay within that body of believers where the ex-spouse is and all. That's not what I was saying. I'm talking about the ability to remarry, because the scripture that you read talked about God says, because of the hardheartedness of their hearts, right? With Moses, that he gave the men the right to leave their wives, right? And so here the wife who has been left, she cannot, right? She is a byproduct. I mean, she cannot remarry. And there's, because if she does, then she is an adulteress. So I was talking about grace to that woman.
Oh, I accept that.
But
But what we're talking about when you
That's
say
what I
it's
was
just
talking about.
between you
I
and
agree
your
with you.
God.
And that is too, because a lot of times people will shame you to say, no, you cannot remarry because your spouse did not divorce you according to the rules of the law. So we didn't see your husband, commit any adultery. You
So you
can't
didn't have any right,
remarry. That's why I talked about God's grace, and it is between them and God, because they know what happened in the home, and the other people do not, even if they hear stories about it. It's the right and the left, and then there's the truth, right? But anyway, God knows the real truth.
I guess existentially you can say everything is between you and God, but the fact of the matter is that we live in community, and we have to address how what you do impacts community. For example, let's say Pat says, look, I know that we don't drink in this denomination, but I have always liked Michelob, and dadgummit, these kids at Camp Danny Davis, they make me want to have a couple of Michelob. And it's just between me and God. Well, the community will say it might be, but as a community, we can't accept what you're doing. And the community has the right to say that. And you might have to move forward.
I'm the one that jumped on. I'm the one that jumped on Marlena as soon as she said it's between me and God. I don't want to take away what you said before with grace and God's mercy, because that I'm with you 100% when it comes to that. I'm afraid, Marlena, and I know you. We all know each other here, right? We can fight all we want. I'm afraid that someone listening
may misunderstand.
Right. I'm gonna go on that level. That someone listening to this will think that we are giving them permission to step all over the sanctity of the comeback, because there's still a sanctity of the comeback. All right. If you want to get remarried, I believe that you should get remarried, or if that's what God has for you, God has for you. Matter of fact, I hate to tell you this, if the first one didn't work out,
the chances of the second one, right?
No, not the chance of the second one. If you have made a mistake in the first one, that's what grace is, right? Isn't it? Grace is what comes next. I
should marry some woman named Grace. Next?
No, Graciela from Cuba. That might work out. No. And why I'm saying that is because I don't want someone listening to this to say, you know something, I'm going to get up now. And I'm using these examples: same church, same community, same family, and decide to say, I'm good. Let me go ahead and get married to someone and not think about the responsibility of what's happening around them. I'll give you this. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. Just let me get this. You threw out youth director divorce. What are the young people going to say?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What are the young people going to think about it? Right. I could be the right one here. It's not about being right. It's the responsibility of what happens in my community.
Oh, so let me ask you this. When we're talking about responsibility, I was looking at it more as I decided to have a divorce. My responsibility to my community is to handle it properly in terms of how, not necessarily to stay together because it's going to hurt the community. Is that? I just want to make sure I'm getting.
Oh, I'm nowhere near that, Tasha. I'm far away from that. I'm saying after the divorce, there's a responsibility, and that's why I said it's a responsibility in the divorce, and there's a responsibility in remarriage.
And the community has to reflect back to you what they see.
Okay.
If you and your husband say we're getting a divorce, and ain't nobody's business but ours, y'all go ahead and do what you do. The community can say, no, what you have done makes a statement to us, and this is what we hear it saying, and we're not comfortable with that statement. The community has a right to say that.
Yes, they do. Because when you
sign that contract, is to hear it.
And look, Marlena agrees with me. You can see, looking on her face, you see.
When I signed a contract,
you're shaking your head the wrong way, Marlena. It's supposed to be like that.
When I signed a contract back in 1995, when I get on Facebook and click marriage, I'm married on Facebook. Yeah. When I'm introduced at a church and my wife, please stand up, I'm bringing community into my life when I do something of that nature. The next week, when I get on and I unclick marriage and I stop introducing her, Nick, you met my wife for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two things that I left with. Number one, you said, oh, this is the first time I've met you. And look how long we have known each other, Nick.
Right.
Let's look at that first part. I have to ask myself the question, why is it that he's just knowing her for the first time?
I ain't been around.
But I want to understand. Help me to understand.
Nick is crazy.
I understand a limited community involvement. Limited.
Sure.
That's what I understand.
I could go limited. By that. Marlena, you are a pastor. We know your other professions, but you're a pastor, right? You're not a lady pastor. You're a pastor in the work. Mm-hmm. People see you. You start to build community based on who you are and what God has put you in as a service is concerned. You meet somebody and you decide to get married. That same community will be witnesses to the decision that you make to remarry. Mm-hmm. There'll be witnesses towards that.
Or to marry.
Yes, I agree with that too.
All right, Marlene, you come and you meet this fine fella. He's making a good living.
Like this guy, Pat Graham. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, it's somebody like that. And you say, this is the man I'm going to marry. You know, baby, come on up and introduce yourself. And said, my husband, now he can't be here with me every Sabbath because the club that he runs sometimes goes over on Friday, and he has to pick up the liquor for the Saturday night program.
I don't know.
Your community is going to tell you can't marry him.
I want you to stick to the.
No, but he's right.
But that's my point.
That wouldn't be done.
The point is not whether you do it or not. And we wondering about it. But the point is that the principle is, does the community have a right to say something? And it does.
Yes. If Marlena married somebody,
right,
that does not look like someone that she should marry or sound like that person that she should marry, we have given the community permission to say something. Not to say that you're going to follow through with it. But we give it,
I didn't have a stroke. Okay. I believe what Marlene is saying, and I believe what Nick is saying is that the community has a right. You have a right to say and a right to respond, but it doesn't mean that your response is supportive.
Right.
Okay. Sometimes the response of the community can be destructive.
Absolutely.
Right. I agree.
And if we give way to the right of the community to respond, you need to respond responsibly.
Yeah.
If you think your whole marriage issue is you have to oblige the community, if you think your marriage, good or bad, is going to affect the community needs to understand that your response to that good or bad is just as important.
I agree.
I agree. I want everyone to know that I'm not hereby saying that the community's response is good, bad, or indifferent. I'm simply saying there is a right that it should be expected.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Nick,
absolutely. If Nick, Nick has a problem. He wants to go to the kingdom to meet Halle Berry, right? That's a green. That's a green.
She may
room
be
thing.
there. She could be there.
I'm not saying she's not going to be there, but I'm gonna tell you now.
I gotta wait to the kingdom. But go ahead, please continue.
She's gonna be your sister Nick, anyway. You just read it.
Nick, I'm gonna be straight up with you. We're friends. I'm a part of your community. You know what? I'm done with y'all.
You are not going to be her sixth husband.
Start over.
No, Nick. You heard what Marlena just said?
What'd she say?
Go ahead, say it again, Marlena.
You are not going to be her sixth husband.
She got that right. She got the right to tell you that, Nick.
But she does. She does.
She got the right to tell you. Now,
she does.
Right. If a community has a right, they have a right. But you have to understand, sometimes the community is not all right in their response because they have a right.
And that's when you leave.
I mean, there were communities way back when communities decided that certain young ladies were witches and they burned them.
That is true.
At the stake, because the community responded. Mm-hmm. The community says this community has spoken.
Sometimes you have to find a new community. Sometimes you have to find a new community.
And Chuck, that was my point to help people understand that the community can express. They have no power over your, even if it, look, wait.
No.
Let me say.
I agree with you.
Oh, you agree with? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because somebody could
Be
be
quiet,
listening right now. Someone could be listening right now,
Mhm.
and they feel that Pastor Tally has given them a right to go and talk to this couple. I've been meaning to say something to them.
Well, that's not the community. That's just,
they are
that's
in the
part of the
community.
no, they're in the community. They're not the community.
But they,
Right,
because,
and they're
but
part of the community.
But they
Yeah.
can misunderstand this conversation to
Well,
say, I disagree
I
with what
can't make
that
excuse for
couple
stupid
is.
people.
Yeah, but Tally, you understand what I'm saying? You can say something and two people hear two different things.
Well,
Right.
You understand?
Look, there's always the knucklehead congregation. They're going to hear stuff and all that. I want to be clear. When I say the community, I mean that which is reflective and representative of the community in which you are placed. There is, for example, you can't get married unless the community tells you can. Am I correct?
Yeah, but that's too
There's a
technical. But I
law.
got you.
There's a law.
Go ahead.
But the question I have is, what is the basis of the community's position? If they say, oh, the community disagrees with the fact that you're getting remarried, based on what?
Based on what there are laws in communities that determine. For example, let's say that Marlena meets this wonderful guy.
Are
She
you
wants to
making
marry
predictions on my life?
Wonderful.
Y'all could be prophesying.
And then we say, Marlena said,
I'm good, but y'all could be bringing some prophecy.
We go to she goes to get her license and find out that this guy is her first cousin. And the community will say, you cannot marry him.
Sure.
No matter how much you love him, no matter how much you love the Lord, you cannot marry him. You
because
say,
he's what? Because he's related to you?
Because he is your first cousin. That is the rule. Now, in the
Well,
Bible,
the Department of Health may have something to say about that.
Well, and that's it. That's
I do know some people who married their first cousin.
The point that I make, Abraham married his sister.
That's right.
The point that I'm making is
Half-sister.
it is based upon the prevailing mores of that community. For example, there's a good chance that Joseph could not have married Mary in this community.
Well, that's not a
because
good chance. She could not.
She could not because she was too young.
13, yeah.
So the community decides things, and we have to recognize that the community is going to weigh in. And if we're not happy with the community, it may be good to find another community.
I think finding another community is pivotal there. Because my personal experience,
I got one question before
the community didn't respond.
Right. Or didn't respond with the same grace.
And they had every right to respond. And I was hoping that they would respond. But they didn't respond.
That's key there. So they didn't, it was like it never happened. That's what you're saying? Like no one
they didn't have the courage. They didn't have the courage to address what they perceived to be, quote, messiness.
Listen, if
we
I
don't like
divorce,
to talk about,
if I
your business.
If I divorce my wife and marry Marlena. Hold on, let me think how that looks.
You better move to Argentina.
That's right. Hold on. Chuck,
Natalie, I'm for you, sister.
No, Chuck,
like, let me be clear.
Listen to what Chuck
Natalie
said.
is prettier than me, and they say that men always leave for someone less. Don't be using me as that example.
I'm not. Marlena makes money. Listen what I'm saying. Marlena got houses and land. No. Let me tell you what I mean by that.
Help us, Lord. Help all of us.
Chuck made a joke just now. Chuck was cynical just
now.
He said, you better move to Argentina. See, he's right. I mean, he's right about that. I mean, even though he kind of joke, how would it look in our community? Let's take away living in Philly or living on this block. In our community, it'll be terrible, right? That we come up in here, we both driving in our a Tesla, looking good. Our license plate say Marlena and Pat, and we driving. Come on, Marlena, can you picture it, Marlena?
Marlena says, like, I'm staying out of this.
This is terrible. This is a terrible example.
Hold on, Marlena. You say that's a terrible example, but it
happens.
It happens.
And
it happens in the Adventist ministry. It has happened.
Yes.
Come on.
I think the whole thing about community pressures, or even peer pressures, while they may intend to help,
right,
they can end up being destructive and misleading. But they have a right to do that. True. They were right.
Chuck, or an executive producer, this show could spin off into the way church people, our community treat people, right? Because this is where we are. Because immediately in my mind, Chuck, we talked about last week, or even in the green room, what people had to say about situations. And I'm sitting here thinking about, I've had situations coming in. It's not divorce, but I've had situations come in. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, I would not step foot back into the Adventist church. Right. And go into church that would treat us better. So if we think about this again, let's go back to it, because this all spawned off from Marlena saying, it's between me and God, and then we got all whichever. Again, the responsibility of the church is to be able to respond the way Christ would respond.
That is true.
And that's what we're missing.
And we don't know how to do that, I don't think.
And one of the problems, and then I want to ask a question because I know we're close. One of the problems is that our church, because we are a church of laws, we try to find a law, and one size does not fit all. And other times when it gets uncomfortable, we just let things go. It has happened in our professional clergy, and it has happened in our churches. And we know it, and it doesn't make any sense to us to lie and act like we don't.
Right.
But marriage is very important. But, when you think about it, you would think that the Bible would say, this is how you do marriage, and this is what it ought to look like. I want you guys to name to me the most successful couple that you see in the Bible, and whether or not the Bible sets them forth as a model for marriage.
Can I throw Nick off for a second? Nick, y'all, I was in this guy. I can't say Adam and Eve. I was in this.
Ride or die.
What
ride or nobody else?
You said they ride or die.
Listen. So I did a marriage and family class with the same professor that I was telling you all about in our last show. And he had us go through all the marriages
in the Bible.
And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I ain't got no chance.
Name the most successful married couple that you see in Scripture.
Well, we already know how women were and how they were treated. They were just property.
They didn't write those stories in the Bible. Those stories.
I ask all them questions.
But I'm saying, then it's not a evenly weighted relationship.
No. But
okay, Nick, let the other shoe drop for the sake of the show ending on time.
But
I don't. The question, the answer, really, I actually don't know.
They're none. I don't think they are.
You know who one of the most successful couples were in the Bible?
Who's that?
The one that we give the least amount of credit to.
Who's that?
Job and his wife.
Yeah, but if you read,
okay. No, you may look at it either.
Yeah, and the community got all up in their business.
That's right.
Anyway,
but they held on. They persevered. They held on, and at the end of it all, she was still there with the man.
So was Adam and Eve. That's back to what Tommy was saying.
Anything was wrong with Adam and Eve. I just said that. I just said they didn't have a whole lot of choice in the matter.
But can I flip this?
Adam wasn't gonna say, "Look, if you keep this up,
you know what?
I'm going down the street and wait a minute."
If you guys keep talking, we're gonna end up with a part 3.
No. Okay, but
I think we are anyway.
We're gonna have to change the name of the podcast.
Let me shed some light.
We have to name it now. What you talking about, Willis?
Let me shed some light on this though. Sometimes we look at the Bible. The majority of the time, we look at the Bible on what to do.
Right.
There are not some things. We ought to be able to open up the Bible and look at what not to do.
What not to do. Yeah.
And I think if we could look at some of the marriages, and some of those marriages were rocky all the way through, but still ended up successful down at the end. It just became rocky through it. Very dysfunctional families in the Bible, from Joseph to David. The man after God's own heart. So when Moses,
God got a bad heart.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I want everyone to understand this: that the Bible still has the principles of us keeping our marriages together.
The point that I'm making by asking the question is that the Bible clearly presents to us that marriage is an ideal proposition, rarely able to be lived out completely perfectly ideal, and people struggle, and it presents struggles, and it's okay to struggle, and sometimes the struggle ends in brokenness, and it is okay to end in brokenness as long as you continue to act redemptively. Job's marriage, everybody thinks that Job's wife left him and all that. She didn't leave him. She was right there with him, stayed right there with him.
I knew that.
You know, I mean, and so it just shows that you know, the idea is just to ride through and try to keep your heart soft so that the hardness of your heart doesn't end in what Chuck said earlier is death. where you saying, honey,
we could have ended the show right there.
But Tally, if we could rewind to what you said last week, I really loved that God calls us to live in peace.
In peace.
Yeah.
If both people could commit to living in peace, then I think we'll have better homes.
Yep. Look, I agree with you completely there. But
there's a lot.
I was hoping somebody would say Jacob and Leah. Yeah, I know. Marlena and I agreed it's going to cloud puppy dogs outside. Trust me.
It ultimately boils down to the battle of flesh and spirit.
You know,
and
that's true.
That can mean a lot of things to different people. But for those that are out there that are going through this, as much as we laugh and whatever, we realize it's not a humorous thing.
Yeah.
And we just want to say that, you know, individuals out there, whether you've gone through it, you know, or going through it, we understand the hurt. We understand the community, how helpful or destructive they can be, in that you really do have to rely on the Lord guiding you, and try not to be swayed. But it is a very serious matter. We try to make a little levity here because, you know, that's just us. That's UpSet Podcast. That's the way we work.
But Chuck,
but we definitely feel and know the seriousness of this.
Yep.
And I say that because we've had a few viewers that say, "Well, this is not a laughing matter."
Right.
You're right. It is not a laughing matter.
But Chuck, let me just add this also. Sometimes we laugh because we're uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we
laugh
because
we're hurt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So because
we laugh
really, I want our viewers to understand that you know, sometimes, you know, we think of our parents, or we think of our aunties and uncles, we think of our friends. Look, it's 5 of us here, and two of us or 3 of us have gone through something of the matter. So we're not laughing at each other. I want you to know sometimes it's uncomfortable even talking amongst.
And sometimes we laugh because it's ironic. Funny in an ironic way. I look at my first marriage and say, what the heck was I thinking? And then I look at my divorce and think, what the heck was I thinking? I mean, you know, it's irony. I mean, but it beats crying about it for the rest of your life. And
that's right.
You know,
and so laughter is good for the soul.
It's good for the soul.
It's good for the soul.
Absolutely.
And Chuck was so profound. I had something great to say, but what he said was so profound. I'll just add this last little thing. I know someone had a comment on premarital counseling. Yes, you should. Yes, you must. As a matter of fact, when I don't marry anybody without counseling them and helping them along the way. And the more difficult marriage is, I make sure they understand that, so that they will understand this union that they are about to embrace. That is not easy. It's going to take some work, and it's going to take some sacrifice in Christ, because you can't be selfish. You have to be selfless. So I just want to add that. Don't listen to Tally, what he was about to say.
No, but let me tell you what I'm going to say, Marlena. I was going to laugh because I was thinking of a couple that came to me, an older guy. He wanted to get married, and I said, well, you know, you gotta, you know, you have to get premarital. And he said, why do I need premarital counseling? I've been married 3 times before.
And you still didn't get it right. That's right.
Did you not?
You don't.
I just stared at him for a little while.
Community.
And he just. You know.
Saying you need to be on the front row of the class.
Yeah. Seriously though, we have a bus to catch. And
all right, guys.
Literally.
Yeah. It just pulled up.
Yeah, it's left already. I'll walk it. But don't worry about it, guys. I'll
use bus on Sunday. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
yes. I'll use the community to get me there.
But no, I wanted to make sure, you know, of course, we're just talking, but as we mentioned, we understand the serious nature of something like this. People could be in the stage of separation, divorce, and there is a resource. This is a resource that was recommended by our Relationship Ministries Department, divorcecare.org. And this is a community online of those who have experienced divorce themselves. They lead these sessions and different topics about facing anger, depression, kid care, all the things that we didn't even get to talk about that come with divorce. So this is a possible community with resources for you if you really want to find a place where you can talk about these things more. As we know, as a church, we don't talk about them enough. But this is an online church community that you could be a part of and get resources to help you cope with whatever stage you're in. So we don't want to leave you empty-handed. So check out that site, divorcecare.org. And the key is we don't want anyone stuck. Or feeling hopeless, whether you're currently in a divorce or divorce, feeling lonely, or whatever emotions you may be experiencing. We want you to know that there's hope, there's help. There are people who understand what you're going through, who want to help you with what you're going through. And we just want to be able to open up the dialogue, because we're hoping that by having these conversations like this, it will encourage more people to have these open dialogues and be able to shoulder each other up and know for people to know that they're not alone, and there is a church community that is supportive and not
and to understand, and you're right, and to understand how valuable you are and how valuable you are to God.
Right. And divorce does not change that. That's a non-factor in terms of how God feels about you.
So where do we write?
You might have to go across town.
Argentina.
Hey, so yeah, we appreciate all the comments in the chat from last week. So we look forward to them again this week. But if you want to email us about something that we've shared, upset@acsda.com is always a place where you can write to us if you don't feel comfortable doing so in the chat. But we appreciate you joining us every Sunday at 6 p.m. We hope that this topic has been helpful in some way. And we appreciate the panel. I appreciate my colleagues, the crew, for being vulnerable and transparent and giving it all we've got with this topic. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, this is
always
the end.
A pleasure.
We'll see you guys next week.
Take care, family.
Same time.
Bye.
Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, that a man who is not married is incomplete. It is only after he's married that he's really finished.
And with that,
I know. Let me run.
The community has spoken.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.